Okay, so first of all, here on 7.2, number 11, we have 2t squared minus 3t minus 2 over 2t plus 1 divided by the quantity 4 minus t squared. So let's first write this in better notation. So 2t, 3t minus 2 over 2t plus 1 divided by is the same as, if I put that over 1, it's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal, which is 1 over 4 minus t squared. So I have that. Now I'm looking into, before I evaluate it any further, it might be see if I can factor anything out. So the top one, this top expression, will get factored down using my technique. That comes out to being 2t plus 1 and t minus 2 over 2t plus 1 times 1 over, and that becomes 2 minus t and 2 plus t. So I have a multiplication operation. I can see I have a common factor even before I go any further. I see I got a common factor top and bottom. So now I can cancel out that expression and that expression. Multiply across. That gives me t minus 2. I'll multiply straight across over 2 minus t and 2 plus t. So the question is, do I have any other common factors? On first glance, they're not identical, right? They are not identical, so it doesn't look like I can cancel anything out. But if I factor out a -1 up top, that becomes negative t plus 2. So just by factoring out a -1, that's a legal move. I can do that. And you can see that essentially this expression now becomes -1. I can reverse these guys out. 2 minus t over 2 minus t, and I see, oh, I got another common factor. And that common factor is that guy right there. So I'm left with my final answer of -1 over 2 plus t would be my final answer for that expression. Here's the next one. Alright, for 7.3, number 12, we have 4x over x squared plus 2x plus 1 minus the quantity of 2x plus 5 over x squared plus 4x plus 3. In order to first, because I got added, subtract, in this case I'm subtracting, before I can subtract fractions, I got to make sure I got a common denominator. So let's first factor out and see. I can see from first glance they're not identical, but let's factor this out. Factor out the bottom piece, but factor out the top piece, or both bottoms, and see what we get. So when I do that, I see on the left side I got 4x over x squared, or x plus 1 times x squared plus 1, which yes can be the quantity x plus 1 quantity squared. That's fine. Minus 2x over 5 over x plus 3 and x plus 1. So now I'm looking, I can see, hey, they both have an x plus 1, but this guy over here on the right side is missing an x plus 1, while the guy on the left is missing an x plus 3. So to do that, I need to multiply by a factor 1 to get that common denominator. So on the right side, I'm going to multiply by x plus 1, because then the denominator will have the quantity on the left side. I'm going to multiply by what's missing over on the right side, which is x plus 3. So when I multiply those guys out, I'm going to have this expression, multiply the right side and left side by both. Remember, x plus 1 over x plus 1 is nothing more than the fancy form of 1. X plus 3 over x plus 3 is nothing more than the fancy form of 1. So I do that, and then when I get that, when I multiply that out, I'm going to distribute this through. That gives me 4x squared plus 12x over that quantity of x plus 3, x plus 1, x plus 1. And on the bottom, I got a full of this guy out, right? So 2x times the x gives me 2x squared. 2x times the 1 gives me a 2x. 5 times x gives me a 5x. And 5 times 1 gives me a 5. All over a common denominator of x plus 3, x plus 1, x plus 1. So now that I have a common denominator, I can combine the top and two fractions. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and simplify. I see a 2x and a 5x right here. That's going to give me 7x. I can combine those two terms right away, so that's good. It'll be plus 7x, so that comes out to doing that. Now I'm going to subtract. So I got quantity 4x squared plus 12x minus the entire quantity. This entire quantity has to be subtracted. Minus 2x squared plus a 7x plus a 5. I got to do the entire quantity, though, all over the common denominator of x plus 3, x plus 1, x plus 1. So when I do this, I'm going to distribute the negative sign through because it's subtracting the entire quantity. So I'm going to change this into a positive. It's going to be a negative. So all the signs behind it flip. Negative. That becomes a negative. That becomes a negative. So now when I combine those like terms, I got a 4x squared minus or plus a negative 2x squared gives me 2x squared. 12x plus a negative 7x gives me a positive 5x. And then I'm left with a negative 5 at the back end right here. Negative 5 all over a common denominator of x plus 3, x plus 1 times x plus 1. Or you can write that as x plus 1 quantity squared. That's fine. And that will be your final answer for number 12 on 7.3. Alright, for this one, 7.5, number 6, we have 2 over y plus 2 minus 5 over 2 minus y equals 3y for y squared plus 4. Let's first go ahead and factor before we try to find the lowest common denominator. Let's first factor out what we can. So I got 3y. I'm going to factor the bottom expression. It comes out to being y minus 2 and y plus 2. Alright, so then I glance over at what I got. Well, I got a y plus 2 over here. Now this 2 minus y, this is what we need to start being comfortable with. Yes, it's not exactly the same as this guy, but it's a negated version, meaning it's the opposite version of this. So what I do is I'm going to change this expression. If I negate this whole expression, make the opposite of this whole expression, that expression now becomes, this minus sign will now become a plus 5 because that's the opposite, and everything's opposite, so negative 2 plus y, which obviously now becomes 5 over y minus 2. Now I identify, ooh, that is a common, or they do have to share a common factor. So y minus 2, y plus 2, and that's the biggest thing we need to get comfortable with this. I still have my 2 plus y plus 2, and 2 over y plus 2. So the biggest thing is this value right here. Actually, if I switch all the signs, I don't change the value. And so this expression down here is the same as that expression up top. So now what I got to do, so now I can see that the 5y, like I said before, 5 over negative 2y plus, or negative 2 plus y is the same as 5 over y minus 2. So now my common, the fraction I want to, or the value I want to multiply everything by is this y minus 2, y plus 2. And whenever I do one side, I got to do everything on the other side. Y plus 2. And y minus 2, y plus 2. So when I do that, the left side, that cancels with that cancels with that, so leaving me with, on the right side, 3y. On the left side, the y plus 2 and the y plus 2 cancel out, leaving me with 2y, or 2 times the quantity of y minus 2. And over here, the y minus 2 and the y minus 2 cancel out, leaving me with 5 times the quantity of y plus 2. So now that I've gotten rid of my fractions, now I can distribute this 2 through. That gives me 2y minus 4 plus, distribute the 5 through. That gives me 5y plus 10 equaling 3y. And now I combine them like terms. I see a 2y here and a 5y there. That gives me 7y. And the minus 4 plus the 10 gives me a plus 6 equals 3y over the other side. So I'm going to subtract 3y from both sides. 3y. So that gives me 4y plus 6 equals 0. Subtract the 6, subtract the 6. And I'll move up here. And that gives me 4y equals a negative 6. Divide by 4, divide by 4. So I'm left with y equals negative 6 fourths, which can be reduced down to negative 3 halves. And that's my answer for that expression. Hope that helps.